Again. I haven't gone away, and I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna be sticking around. I've been at work for the last couple of days, so I've sort of been listening to different stuff um, on my phone, and I use Audible, which is quite good. So you can sort of have hours and hours of time to listen to stuff. And just finished the recent book by a lady called Anita Mujani called Dying to Be Me. Fantastic book. And feeds into really what I've been talking about on these videos. Um, and I also wanted to talk today about the second part of the ego, which is I am what I do. So the first one is I am what I have, and that idea that, or this disease that, the disease of more, that I think we kind of buy into and think that we must have more and more stuff in our lives to make us happy, these external things. And I was talking about the actual tangible things don't really bring that kind of happiness that we look for. So the next thing is to do with the ego, and it's the ego says you are what you do, and it wants you to believe in that. And I think for me, it started way back, I suppose, in education. We all, from a Western point of view, go to school, and and particularly when I was going through school, this idea that you are. It's almost like a separation of sorts. You'll do your spelling tests, and you'll do your math tests, and you will do your lessons. And there was definitely, when I was going through school, a pass fail mentality, and the word fail was quite pervasive statement, really. So it was something that you started with. I did, anyway, particularly quite early. And don't get me wrong. From an education point of view, I received an education. I came out at 16, and I had an education provided for me. And many people in the world don't necessarily have that, shall we say, luxury. So I came out, and it was then that I left the world of education. And I thought it's funny, really, because with those 16 years, I would say less than that, actually, considering I started around about 4 or 5. With that education, I was then supposedly equipped to go out and function for the rest of my life, which, when you look at it in those terms, seems a bit odd, particularly with the advances in science and perhaps the stuff I missed. Because I will tell you now, my education was limited. Limited because I wasn't particularly interested. So I kind of had a double whammy there, where I was failing and I was also particularly disinterested, and felt that the separation started way back. So you go into the world of work, and then you start looking for jobs, as is the Western culture, I suppose. We all go in that way, and we sort of go from. I think Billy Connolly put it really well, because in his time there was full employment, and the schools opened their doors, and the shipyards opened theirs, and everybody poured in. And I think when I was coming through school and I turned 16, that wasn't happening. So I went into the military. But out of one uniform, I suppose, into another. And this is what I wanted to talk about, because I think what happens is, through no fault of our own, and through the conformity of this Western society, we take on jobs, and we take on identities that become, I suppose, part and parcel of our growing up, and part and parcel of our life. I think we strive a lot to improve our CV, improve our status, I suppose, in life. And this, with it, brings some anxiety, I would have thought. It did for me, particularly because it seemed harder for me to get on in the world of work without a glowing CV of qualifications, accolades, merits, etc. So it wasn't a particularly obvious choice, but I went into the military. Another, shall we say, conformist environment. But what I'm talking about here in the ego is, you are not what you do. I think people tend to then lead their identity with, who they are at any given point in their life. If you look back at my CV, one could say I was in the military, then I was a driving instructor, then I was a pub landlord, then I was a recruitment consultant, then I was in the NHS, then, and so on and so on. And we almost take on that identity and lead with it. And I think we miss the point, and we miss the opportunity, I suppose, whilst we're growing from an educational and status standpoint, then we miss the opportunity to grow on the inside. And although, you will grow in your experiences, and you will grow in your strategies with coping with life, I think we kind of bumble our way into that, into our 20s and into our 30s, and I'm ultimately now in my 40s, looking back and sort of thinking about how I got here, how I managed to get to this point. And this point for me now is very reflective, as you can tell from this videos. And I thought my education had equipped me with the right tools, and it turns out that there was a big chunk that was missing. And the chunk was that I was just not working on myself internally. Yes, perhaps working on my CV and showing the world who I was from that perspective. And isn't it funny when people are discussing friends or colleagues or people in their social circle, and you'll say, "Do you know Peter? Yeah, I know Pete. Yeah. What does he do?" And I think that's almost like an automatic response. It's, what does he do for a living, not who is he? And I think that's where I'm trying to get to. We kind of we lose the humanity in people if we lead in that way, and that's quite normal. I know that's a normal response, and it's not something you can really put on a CV. Say that you're a kind person, you're compassionate, you're happy with who you are, and you understand about the infinite and the law of attraction and all these things. But ultimately, that has changed me, and it's changed my outlook on how I interact. And I think that's sometimes missing, and I think it's worth exploration. So you are not who you what you do. Sorry, is basically, you may be a nurse, you may be a teacher, you may be working in the world of finance, banker. You may be working in social services, etc., etc. You'll have these qualifications, and you'll be recognised in that way. But for me, the ego is something that is into separation, and thereby you're being separated from others. And I think it's quite divisive. I've felt many is the time when I've perhaps applied for jobs, this fear that I'm failing in some way, and I have failed in some way, and that brings with it quite a lot of anxiety and a lot of emotion. And this, I think, when we talk about emotion, there are just really, it comes down to two emotions that seem to drive our lives, and I think I operated from a sense of fear a lot of the time, and the other emotion being love or joy. And I think when you look at your life and you say, well, okay, if I'm struggling at this point, if I'm struggling to get a job because of my qualifications, if I'm struggling to get into a position of status, whatever that might be, am I operating from fear, which it usually is, or am I operating from a sense of passion and joy, and this is really what I want to do? So I think going forward, this is exactly why I'm doing this video blog, is because I've found something that I'm passionate about, and I think it's It deserves it deserves exploration, and I'm really enjoying that. I did mention the law of attraction just quickly before in previous videos, and I think what I'm sensing is one of the laws of attraction is that like attracts like, and I think like-minded people will have these kind of conversations, and that's what I look for. And I think when you go out into the world, you'll see there are certain people that you are drawn to, and certain people that you kind of want to run away from. And that's no bad thing, really, I suppose, because we should be using our internal guidance system so much more, our intuition. One lovely quote was handed to me regarding our intuition, and it said, it's okay to pray, um, but when God or Source talks back to us, then they're looking to cart you away. But we should be thinking, I think, more about the internal work. The Bob Proctor video hits the nail on the head perfectly for me. In that he says between you and any given situation is a gap. It's a small gap. It could be really tiny, and I think that's where you can do a lot of the good work in how you react or you respond to things. So. The second law of the second part of the ego, shall we say, is you are not what you do, and try not to lead with that. I think it'd be better to try and lead with some more of the internal qualities that we all have, and we do all have them, and I think we should be leading with them. So once again, have a great day. We've got a big ego subject coming up next, and continue posting, continue sharing, and inspiring me as much as I'm trying to inspire you. So, as I say, have a great day.